The Detroit Lions head to Washington to face the Commanders, with both teams looking to bounce back from recent losses. Detroit trying to right some wrongs, while Washington just managing injuries and trying to regain form. This will be huge for momentum for both of these teams. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Johnny Gaz. Thank you for returning for another video. Let's get into our Week 10 game preview. We'll start with the headlines and injury updates. I'll tell you about the key matchups and potential X factors, and at the end of the video, I'll tell you my final score and prediction. Let's go.
Set up their last field goal. Lions need this. Goff throwing for Jameson Williams. He got it! Down into the end zone is the end.
Let's kick it off with those headlines. On the Detroit side, they're coming off the Week 9 loss to the Minnesota Vikings, 27-24. In that matchup, Jared Goff, 25 of 37 for 284 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams. However, they really struggled situationally on offense. 5 of 17 on third down, 1 of 3 in the red zone. Goff was actually sacked 5 times in that matchup, and the running game just couldn't get things going. Both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs stalled out. Both had low yards per carry on the day. Defensively, they did hold Minnesota in check. J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback, only 143 yards. They held Justin Jefferson under 50 yards on the day. However, they still surrendered 27 points. Detroit's pass rush still effective. They're actually second in the NFL with 28 total sacks, with Hutchinson leading the way. He logged his 7th against Minnesota in Week 9. A lot of the offensive struggles for the Lions can be attributed to the health of this offensive line. They've now lost left guard Christian Mahogany with a broken leg against the Vikings. He's been placed on injured reserve. On top of that, both tackles, Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, missed Wednesday's practice this week. They did return in a limited fashion on Thursday, but this is a positive sign for the offensive line for this Week 10 matchup against the Commanders. Both coordinators spoke this week. Kelvin Shepard and Johnny Morton were very direct as far as what needs to change moving forward. Offensively, the focus was on the offensive line and the protection issues, and defensively was on the one-on-one opportunities that were missed against the Vikings. The bottom line is the Detroit Lions still have a very serious upside. They have a great passing attack. They have a pass rush that is getting better and better each week, but their success will hinge on their offensive line, the health, their protection, and then, of course, the efficiency, third downs, executing in the red zone. On the Commander side, they're coming off the Week 9 loss to Seattle, 38-14. The biggest story there, they'll now be without quarterback Jaden Daniels with the dislocated elbow. They were already without cornerback Marshawn Lattimore and wide receiver Luke McCaffrey. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin has missed last game, and he has not practiced all week now with a quad injury. Limited in practice this week as well in the defensive secondary, cornerback Trey Amos and safety Quan Martin. On the positive side, they've returned running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and left tackle Laramie Tunsil, as well as linebacker Bobby Wagner. Some additional roster notes for the Commanders. Linebacker Frankie Louvu was initially suspended for this Week 10 matchup. However, the NFL has lifted that suspension for a drop hip tackle in Week 9, changed it over to a minor fine, and he is now expected to play on Sunday against the Lions. The Commanders also added wide receiver Treylon Burks to their 53-man roster in an effort to fill in some of these wide receiver gaps. Ultimately, Washington is having some performance issues, a lot of it because of these health concerns. Last week against Seattle, they only scored 14 points. Jaden Daniels, no touchdowns, had the 1 interception before he had gotten injured. Their offensive line has not been good. They've given up 24 sacks so far this season. Defensively in Week 9, they gave up 330 passing yards and 4 touchdowns to Seattle. And their pass rush just hasn't been there. So ultimately, it appears like Washington is vulnerable. But with Louvu coming back, there is still a glimpse of hope. Some historical context for this matchup. This actually dates all the way back to 1932 as far as the Detroit Lions playing against the Washington Commanders. From 1968 to 1997, Washington had actually won 18 consecutive matchups. And that 1990 game featured a dramatic comeback by Washington and an overtime win. Now, the most recent matchup in the divisional round where Washington came to Detroit and knocked the number 1 seed out of the playoffs certainly still looms in Detroit's hearts and heads, and that will play heavy into this matchup. And I think the Lions certainly have a much better identity now than they have in previous matchups, especially in the historical context. But the Lions will be looking to regroup from their divisional loss and get back at these Commanders on the road. Now let's talk about the key matchups. Detroit heading to Washington here in Week 10. I think the first one to look at is Washington's rush attack versus Detroit's run defense. We know they're going to be without quarterback Jaden Daniels, who had 51 rush yards in Week 9. With Marcus Mariota stepping in, although he's certainly not as dynamic as Jaden Daniels, he can use his legs and may have to do so against this Detroit's defense. The backup running back, Rodriguez, last week for Washington had 65 yards and a score, and they're returning their starting running back, Merritt, to the lineup as well. I think they're really going to want to try and get this run game going against Detroit's defense. But if Detroit's front seven can hold up, it may put Washington in very predictable passing situations, which leans in the Lions' favor. Another key matchup to look out for is the Lions passing attack versus the Washington secondary, who is really beat up heading into Week 10. They're going to be without Lattimore. Last week alone, they allowed 330 yards and 4 touchdowns. Goff, we know, can be very efficient if he's able to get the proper protection. And with weapons like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and Sam Laporta really making waves this season, they should have plenty of opportunity to get this offensive passing attack going against the Commanders. And the biggest key matchup, Lions-Commanders, I believe will be the Lions offensive line versus the Commanders front seven. This Detroit offensive line is a point of concern. Now they will be without left guard Christian Mahogany, and they are struggling at tackle. Both Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell are battling through injuries. They've had protection issues, and they have not been able to run the football effectively the last several weeks. Washington, on the other side, has an effective linebacking crew and are relatively healthy for their defensive front seven compared to their other groups. So they will look to exploit this Lions weakness. Now let's talk about those potential X factors. On the Lions side, defensively, you got to focus in on Aiden Hutchinson. He's leading the team in sacks with 7. And I really believe one of the bigger mismatches here is the Lions front 7 versus the Commanders offensive line. Aiden Hutchinson should have an opportunity to dominate. Offensively, the rushing attack for the Lions just hasn't been there, especially against the Vikings. Jahmyr Gibbs had a tough time getting things going, and I really believe with the reshuffling of the offensive line, they're going to simplify the offense and really go to their bread and butter, this run game, and I think they're going to lean on Jahmyr. Also, the security blanket for this Lions team all season long has been the tight end, Sam Laporta. He had another touchdown catch against the Vikings, and he's really Jared Goff's security blanket when other things aren't going well. I expect that to be the case again against Washington. For the Washington Commanders, some potential X factors defensively, it's got to be that linebacking crew. Both Bobby Wagner and, of course, Frankie Louvu, with the suspension being lifted, will be involved and active, and I think they're going to have an opportunity to make plays against this Lions offensive line. Louvu alone has kind of moved all over the field, and I think he'll be especially effective on the edge against this Lions offensive line. Offensively, I think you have to look at Deebo Samuel. He's one of the only healthy wide receivers they have, but he is a force. And remember, the Lions' depth in the secondary is still going to be tested with DJ Reed out. Terrion Arnold has struggled with injuries, and safety Kirby Joseph will not be available for Week 10. So look for Deebo Samuel to make an impact. I believe Detroit enters this matchup with a chip on their shoulder because of all the questions leaving Week 9 and that loss to the Vikings. They have to be better in protection, figure out the health issues up front, and they have to be more efficient on third downs. If they're able to correct those concerns, there is really no limit to where this Lions team can go. On the other side, Washington is just not healthy enough. Without quarterback Jaden Daniels, they've really lost their identity offensively. I think they can hold up with the Lions with their defense, but ultimately these weapons, the Lions' efficiency through their passing game, I think will make the difference here in Week 10. Because of that, I have the Lions winning 31-20. It would bring the Lions to 6-3 on the season. It would drop the Commanders to 3-7.
Pretty big number when you're doing those averages. Daniels throws. Deebo Samuel has it. Catch and run. Deebo. Good look as we've seen from Samuel in a while.
All right, Lions faithful, that will do it for my Week 10 game preview. Who do you have in this matchup, Lions or Commanders? And what is your final score? Let me know in those comments. If you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gas Sports, please hit that like button. It's the best way to help out the channel. I'd also love it if you consider subscribing. We're on the way to 4,000 now, thanks to you guys. And if you hit the notify bell, you won't miss any future videos. I do have a membership option available. That's where I do highlights, reviews, and a ton of other fun stuff. But there is always free content for you if you search for @JohnnyGazSports on any of your social medias. Thank you guys again. Make sure to take care of yourself and your mental health. That's so important, really more important than anything else. I want to make sure you come back and see me on future videos. Have a fantastic week and weekend ahead. Enjoy week 10. Go Lions.